Hello there, and welcome to Speaking of Our Words, programming that brings you the wide range of voices, stories, and forms of local writers and offering you some insight into their creative process. My name is Chris DeGuire. I teach creative writing workshops at Columbia College Chicago, and I am your host. Today's show will feature Jean Preston, who is the current Poet Laureate of Kenosha, and Nick Ramsey, who is the current Poet Laureate of Racine, and we have a number of open mic readers on today. But let me introduce our guests today. Nick Ramsey has the simple philosophy: practice makes permanent. Born and raised in Racine, Wisconsin, Nick began entertaining audiences with his freestyle raps at the age of 15. He started writing at 21 and has since penned a number of inspirational poems and uplifting songs. His style combines the lyricism and storytelling of golden era hip-hop with the improvisational sound of jazz. He has organized, promoted, hosted, and performed at hundreds of events throughout the U.S. and is currently serving as the Poet Laureate of Racine. He is also the co-founder of the independent production company and record label Family Power Music. More information can be found at familypowermusic.com. And Jean Preston, who is the current Poet Laureate of Kenosha, holds an MFA in creative writing poetry from the University of Southern Maine Stone Coast Writing Program, and is the author of All the Queen's Horses, a collection of original poetry, and 16 Mothers, a chapbook of original poems. Her work has been published in Pleiades, Verse Wisconsin, The Solitary Plover, Centrique, and the Journal of the Association of Research on Mothering. Jean has worked as a presenter, instructor, and tutor for various academic and community organizations, and has read her work at many locations in Kenosha and Racine. Jean is a member of the 2010 Class of Leadership Kenosha. She is also the director of the Carthage College Writing Center and an adjunct assistant professor of English, and lives in Kenosha with her husband, Tom. Welcome to the show, Nick and Jean.
Thanks.
How are you guys doing?
All right.
Good.
All right, so the first question I've got for you guys is, what exactly is a Poet Laureate?
Jean, you go ahead and get that one.
So a poet laureate is either chosen or appointed to represent the city or state or country. And the purpose is really to promote literacy and the love of language and excitement about poetry in the community. So that's our job.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to just say that was very well put. That's correct.
So I know that we have, national Poet Laureates, and I know Maya Angelou comes to mind. I don't know if she is still currently the Poet Laureate of the country. I know that was a while ago. I remember
She's passed away.
seeing her on the television. Yeah. But the two of you are local. So what are your duties as local Poet Laureates?
Go for it.
Well, we were given kind of a responsibility sheet, and it basically said something like you have to do 6 readings, 6 public readings. You have to do one big community project that kind of nourishes and nurtures the creative people of your county and brings them together. And those are the 2 real big obligations. And then it's really on you to go out and create different, excitements, like at a school or at a correctional facility or at a reading or an open mic or something, just kind of take it however you want.
Mm-hmm. I know we're going to talk about your individual projects here in a moment, but now your span as Poet Laureate is 2 years?
2 years. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jean, do you have anything to add about what some of the local Poet Laureate duties are?
Well, I think you just find yourself getting invited to do lots of really exciting things and meeting really exciting people. So, doors have been open that I never thought about. And Nick's project, which he'll tell you about, opened the door to not just poetry, but to art. And we've had events that combine music and, it's just really cool. And all age groups, which I love. Mm-hmm. I've worked with kids. I've worked with middle schoolers, high schoolers, college-age kids, senior citizens. It's just been really a great experience.
Sure. Okay, so then how does one become the Poet Laureate? What is that process like? Like the application process,
it's
or
different for
the
every
idea that you have.
Yeah,
or?
it's different for every, obviously every city and every state and probably nationally too. But and I'm sure every year there might be something, or every 2 years might be something else added into it or whatever. This last lining up of laureates was a little different than the first run of it. So this is the second group of laureates that have gone through both the Racine and Kenosha counties. And this last one was more of a nomination-based thing. From my understanding, they kind of pooled names based off of like the committee and recommendations, and ended up kind of voting on it. And that's how it happened. I mean, for me, I just got a phone call from a pretty prominent literary figure and a real good friend of mine who's on the committee, and he says, "Hey man, you've been nominated for this thing." And I was like, "Well, what is that?" So basically, I just was like, I can't say yes or no. I have to figure out what it is. So tell me what it is. And then I like researched it, and then I was like, well, that sounds kind of neat. So I might as well go about doing that. And I think they probably pick the people that are, not only excited about language, but people who are out there encouraging other people to do it, and who are, actively engaged in their literary community. So that was the process. But I know now for this next run, they have an application process where you submit a number of poems and like your intent for being the poet laureate, and like what your project, or maybe your tentative thoughts of what your project would be, and kind of just why you're excited to be the poet laureate, really.
So I think it's about not only that you're a strong and engaging writer and presenter yourself, because the expectation is you're out there and able to do that, but also that you can foster that in other people and in the community. That's the big piece. And so I think that's one reason they're formalizing the application process a little more, so that they can get that person who's, able to go forward and do that.
Very interesting. Well, I know we all want to hear some of your poetry. So, Nick, if you've got a poem or two that you'd like to start off by reading, and then we'll let Gene read some stuff, and then I'll have a few more questions for you then.
Okay. I'll do one I memorized. It's called "Sing Me a Song," and hopefully I can remember it. It's memorized. Sing me a song. The jester responds the choir should. My insides are burning embers, stomach filled with firewood. Rain dance, not needed. Jitterbugging leaves me knock-kneed with fallen arches on my feet while I stayed when they retreated. Exhale verbal smoke, but leave no fumes in showrooms. Sun's out, not hidden, I can't help I don't fit in. Categorized by size, blue eyes and thick thighs, eternally wise with never-ending supplies. I am chili to cheese fries. Apple and cherry to cheap pies. The need to retry when others don't see why. There's time for failure, so bail your boat before it sinks. Trials for accomplishment while children slip on the ice rink. Get up and go again. Hold your pen, don't hold it in. From young to older men, realize you're holding gems. Speak and be heard, and sure you go out with the fight. 4 chambers glowing so bright it nearly blinds your whole sight. Put your glasses on to shield these ultraviolet rays. While vultures fly for prey, I'm in line, I don't stray. Stay the course for the long haul. Wrong calls happen, be patient. Rap and be flagrant. These written tablets are ancient, carved in stone or leg bone. I head home and close my eyes. Hieroglyphs tell stories, so find the untold prize. This puzzle has no edges, and all the pieces look the same. Assess the still shot on the box and fit it in within the frame. But this perplexes me. Concave to convexity. But Nick, I'd rather respond to all the people that keep on texting me. The nest is free for you to fly and spread your wings to take flight. Gas on the green signals, red signs bring the brake lights. Little tykes to Tonka trucks, Hot Wheels and machines of micro. I write with no typos while chicks flaunt belly lipo. Inserting botulinum toxin to be specific. Aging wrinkles gone, terrific, but be careful you may rip it. Here's a wee little tidbit, imagine life with no mirrors, allowing you to see clearer. A steering wheel steerer with no intent to fear the criticism of your peers. Your valley girls are like dudes in GQ centerfolds, while I maintain to portray the men of old. That's called Sing Me a Song.
Oh, wonderful! I definitely can hear the golden era hip hop and the jazz influences, most definitely.
Thanks.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Gene, how about something from you?
Well, I always joke when Nick and I read together that they chose us because we're so much alike in our style. Not. So I thought it would be appropriate to read a poem I wrote. This is actually an old poem, but I like it, and it's called Talk Radio. Thought that was appropriate. So, Talk Radio. It's been 20 years, and I forget your name, but your voice bored a hole in my brain, curled itself in a tight cocoon, and there it remains till this day. For months after he left, you were my nighttime companion, my only lover, living in your electronic box, taking calls from lonely people who looked to you for answers night after night. Your Vedic voice filled my sleepless hours like the love songs I no longer listened to. If you were lover, the others became my friends, all those broken people, all awake all night, waiting in the darkness for your disembodied voice to tell them what to do. Did anyone ever take your words to heart? Did John from Duluth confront his mother? Jane from Gary dump her cheating spouse? Did Paul from Atlanta stand up at AA and give his real name? Or did they, like me, lie in the darkness for countless nights, letting your voice wash over them, ease their pain, love them back to life?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
We are talking with Nick Ramsey, the current Poet Laureate of Racine, and Gene Preston, Poet Laureate of Kenosha. You are listening to Speaking of Our Words. If I can ask you guys some process questions here. So what is your process like? How do you generate or prepare material? What inspires you, and what is your rewriting process like? How does all that go? And feel free to not have to answer those questions in that order, depending on how the answers come to you.
So I just kind of vacuum in observations, and sometimes I'm smart enough to write those down and throw them in a file folder, and sometimes I'm not. And I'd like to say that I'm one of those people who is a disciplined writer, and every morning I get up at 4 o'clock and I write for an hour. I have to fight for time to write. And so I try to get away at least twice a year to some kind of a retreat, and then I take that file folder that I've hopefully been tucking those little snippets or words or phrases that come into my mind into, and then I try to make something out of that. I also write, obviously, from personal experience, and that sometimes has to cook a while. Like I didn't write poems of my separation or divorce, which happened a long, long time ago, but I didn't write about that for quite a while because I wasn't ready to write about it then. And so it seems that that's happening sooner than it used to, but I have to process quite a long time before it gets to be on paper. And the rewriting part, I think I've learned that that's the fun part of writing. Getting it down on paper is great and exciting, and then tucking it away for a few days and then looking at it again going, oh my heavens, and then the fun begins, right? It's that manipulating the words and the line breaks and word choice and that process. And that's what I try to get my students excited about, because, initially creative writing students think often that you just gush it out on the page and it's perfect. And getting them excited about revision is easier because I'm excited about revision.
Mm-hmm. I know when I first started writing many, many years ago, rewriting was not one of my favorite things to do. I was also under the impression that, this is easy. I have this story. I'm going to write it, and it's perfect in that draft.
Right.
And, I think there's still a while where you think that it is perfect. But I like what you talk about, this idea of this sort of gestation period that writing needs. I know that you also teach, so I want to quick ask you, how does teaching affect your writing? But this idea of, I know in our programs at Columbia College, we have students generating work every week as much as possible. That way we can be giving them, feedback as the semester goes on, as opposed to them turning in 60 pages at the end of the semester. So sometimes they don't get that sort of gestation period if they're working on, one particular piece. They've got to keep working on it every week, and then before they can let it sit. So how do you find teaching, affects you in your writing, whether it's the gestation process or just the actual writing process?
Well, I find it really humbling to teach because I'm always awed by what my students are able to write and what they, it's like, why am I the poet laureate? You should be the poet. I mean, it's just amazing what students can do when they're given the chance to have a voice. And both the traditional age students that I teach at the college or my adult undergraduate students, some of them even more so, because they come into my class sometimes just wanting to tick off a box of their requirements. And my creative writing course in adult ed is called Writing Intensive, and every college student has to have a certain amount of writing intensive courses. So they take my course thinking, oh, creative writing, that'll be fun and easy, and I can get a writing intensive check mark. And then they find out how much work it is, but they also find out how neat it is to be able to say the things they've been wanting to say their whole life, and somebody's willing to listen to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is really what I think is amazing about teaching.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts about teaching as well. Nick, can you talk a little bit about your process? How you get things down? I know the poem you read you had memorized, so I'm just curious as to what your perhaps journaling process is like, what your rewriting process is like. Anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I would have to say that I like the term of vacuuming in observations. Like, I definitely do that all the time right now. I'm looking at all y'all and just thinking, man. But I think more recently with the whole poet laureate position, like it's been like I haven't written a lot of like just for fun. It's always been like it's been more and more like commissioned type things, like this internationally acclaimed author's coming to town, write a dedication piece to him. Okay. So then I have to read all his stuff, and read some of his stuff at least, and then write something for him so that, hopefully he likes it. Or write something for this homeless awareness event. So then I have to research that type. Write a rap for autism, So it's a lot of topical stuff that, like, I end up researching. And it really goes back to like my essays. Like, I remember like writing essays back in school where it's like you come up with your thesis statement and your supporting paragraphs and and then close it all out and everything like that. So I always compared like writing songs to that. So like your chorus for your song or your hook would be like your thesis statement, and then usually in there's the title somewhere, and then each of your verses are supporting that thesis statement. Then you're wrapping it up with like say like a bridge or something like that. So it's very musical, and it's very essay-like. And there was a time when I was like writing every day, and I was a lot more like disciplined. But I kind of miss those days, to be honest. Like, I actually wrote today a little bit, which not a lot, but just a little bit, which was fun. And so that's kind of, I guess, my process. It's been kind of dictated to me a little bit more recently. And I'm looking forward to not having that so much. But the good thing about all that is that you get to research things you wouldn't probably otherwise research. And then influences, let's see, obviously the golden era hip-hop storytellers, Slick Rick, Biggie Smalls, Notorious B.I.G. It was his birthday yesterday. Rest in peace. And then, like a lot of just great songwriters like Bob Dylan, Van Morrison, Louis Armstrong, so a lot of that stuff. And rewriting, I usually rewrite a lot while I'm writing. Like, I'll go back and I'll be like, it's very like syllabic, so my stuff is more metered, it seems like. And so I end up finding, that's too many words, too many syllables, or not enough, or like I need to add a little something, or maybe I need to have some alliteration, like to build into the next line, or have an inner line rhyme. Or sometimes I don't rhyme, which is actually more challenging for me than writing rhymes. So I, rewriting is kind of happens while I'm doing it, and I do go back, maybe circle ideas that I like the best out of them, and then kind of maybe make that into its own piece.
Do you guys find that you read your work aloud when you're in various stages of writing or rewriting?
Yes, I've taught myself that skill, because you hear it's different on the page. When you read it on the page, it might flow really fine, but then you read it and you're like, oh, that word doesn't quite, that needs to be tweaked or whatever. You hear that. You hear, or, to me anyway. I'm sadly missing my reading partner, though. I lost my 16-year-old Scotty about a month ago, and she was my I would just read to her. She would just sit and listen. She was very non-critical, so she was a good listener. So now I'm just talking to myself instead of the dog.
I definitely read out loud too, like all the time. Like I'm walking down the street, like towards oncoming traffic, and I'm just like reciting things in my brain, that like to like memorize them, and then when I'm writing, I read it like kind of under my breath, but still like loud enough so I can hear it to myself and see kind of like the tempo of it. So yeah, I definitely read out loud.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that we talk about in our program at Columbia College is developing not only the sort of like inner sense of audience, but there's so many things that sometimes make a lot more sense when you read them out loud. Like you were saying, Gene, you can read these things on the page and it has its own flow to it, and you can hear it and you can see it, but once it starts coming out of your mouth, there's a whole different rhythm to it. There's a whole different cadence to it, and it's not just looking for proofreading, but it's just to get the whole gist of what's going on. Well, what are these projects that you guys have had to work on as poet laureates?
Oh, I think that's been, really the most fun for both of us, or I don't know, there have been so many good things, but for my project, I decided to bring together 3 senior populations. So the big name of the project was Senior Voices. And we got seniors from Ruther Central High School, seniors from Carthage College, and seniors from the Kenosha Senior Center. And they were invited to write a letter or a poem that was addressed to the city, so Dear Kenosha. So they all wrote these wonderful letters and poems to the city and what it meant to them to grow up here, or what kind of life they've had here. And when I went to Ruther to talk about the project, I made it very clear to those kids that this was the time to say what they meant, and it didn't have to be all sunshine and roses, because life isn't, no matter where you live, always all sunshine and roses. And the seniors too had some amazing stories. The seniors, as I call them, had some very amazing stories to tell about growing up in this town, quite a long time ago, and their experiences. And the college seniors, they're looking ahead. They're coming to an end, probably for most of them, of their time in Kenosha, and they've maybe only been here for 4 years. But the depth of their attachment to the city has been just really, really marvelous. So we did that. We collected that. We have 30 poems now in a chapbook. That you can purchase for $10 for
Only
the
$10.
Poet Laureate program, and that will help to fund the program in the future. But we had a wonderful event at the Civil War Museum about a month ago, where all of the authors were invited to come. Many of them did come, and they read their pieces. And we have a documentary up on YouTube. Also, if you just go into YouTube and type in Dear Kenosha, it will pop up. It talks all about the program, about the event. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Oh, it sounds great.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was there in attendance, and I got a chance to read one of the guys.
And he made guacamole.
Oh,
it was great.
I made guacamole. Yeah, and but I got a chance to meet a lot of the people that were involved with it. But I also was asked to read a poem of one of the guys, the senior citizen guys, who didn't feel comfortable reading it out loud. So it was challenging reading that, from his standpoint and where he viewed himself in Kenosha. But yeah, it was a great event, and that's a really creative process at Senior Voices. The one we did in Racine was kind of an undertaking a little bit differently, with including artists as well as writers. So I basically asked a whole mess of different people, artists and writers, and I narrowed it down to 12 poets and 12 artists. And the artists I wanted to be not just like painters or something like that. I wanted it to be a diverse population. And the same thing with the poets too. I wanted some diverse backgrounds, and I wanted young and old and middle-aged, and I wanted men and females, and I wanted, different ethnicities and races and socioeconomic statuses and different things like that. So I feel like that was really a guiding focus I had. So these 12 individuals on either side provided an initial piece of poetry or art, and the art ranged from anything from like blown glass and jewelry to like metal sculptures, painting, photography, pretty much like all the major mediums, and then I gave it to like the opposite group, and I read through all of them and looked at all of them, and I got artist statements from all the artists too, and I basically picked the ones that I felt would fit best with the other group, and then they were given probably about 3 months to create a new piece based off of their inspiration from the piece they received. And then all those pieces came up, so there's 24 poems and 24 art pieces, and we put them up for display, which is still up on display at the Racine Arts Council, 316 6th Street, Racine, Wisconsin, 53403, on Fridays and Saturdays from 12 to 4. You can view those for free. One side of the wall, the poems came first, and the art responses are on that, and then the other side of the wall, the art came first, and the poems were in response. So that turned out really well, and then we had an opening reception on the first Fridays of May 1st, and we had a good 100, 150, a lot of people came through, and there was, again, like potluck, and a lot of the poets, pretty much almost every single poet, read their piece while a projector showed like an enlarged image of their artwork, like associated artwork on the back wall. And so we did that in 2 different segments. It probably took about 20 minutes each or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then there was a lot of excitement, and someone just offered to like fund the process of cataloging it and putting it into a book. So we're going to be doing that in the near future.
Cool. That sounds great. Well, I'd love to hear some more poetry, and then I'm going to turn this over to Walter and Jim and Troy, who are also in the studio. I know Walter has a few questions for you guys too. But yeah, I would love to hear some more poetry. So whoever would like to read.
For sure. You should read the first one. Oh, just to mention, the name of that project was Transformation Art and Poetry. I noticed that you had your name on there. I didn't put my name on the assignment.
Put your name on there, Nick. Well, I know you mentioned earlier when we talked that this is often broadcast for seniors.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll take a chance and read this poem that talks about the movie Gone with the Wind, which my traditional age students no longer are familiar with. I learned that teaching creative writing, and I said something about Scarlett O'Hara, and they looked at me like, what? I'm like, okay, but this audience might know. So there's a scene in Gone with the Wind where Rhett Butler swoops Scarlett up the stairs, and you don't see what happens, but the next scene she's sitting up in bed the next morning, like the cat who swallowed the canary, and something exciting happened that night. And that's why the Catholic Church did not like students to go to that movie back then. It was actually condemned, and my mother was in high school at that time. So this poem is called When My Mother Was Young. When my mother was young, girls from St. Cecilia's High School snuck into the movies to hear Rhett Butler say, damn, and see Scarlett O'Hara sitting up in bed the morning after God knew what, and looking pretty darn happy about whatever that had been. When my mother was young, girls stopped at the convent on their way to prom to prove they had no cleavage bared, no décolletage, that nothing showed to shock the hovering Holy Ghost. When my mother was young, the nun said the best thing a girl could do was to become a nun herself. If a girl refused the call, the next best thing was to marry young, raise lots of babies who would serve the church. When my mother was young, she was voted prom queen. That same spring, my father proposed. The nun said my mother could not be queen unless she took that ring off. When my mother was young, she married my father, who sometimes said, damn. When my mother was young, she married my father and discovered what Scarlett was smiling about.
Love it, love it. Do you have another one there to read?
Sure. Something a little different. This is actually a newer poem, and I'm still fussing on it, but I'll give it a whirl. It's called The Day I Die. I stand naked at the gates, trailing a list of questions so long it hangs like an unfurled roll of adding machine tape and touches down somewhere near Dubuque. St. Peter asks, what's your beef? And I say, I'd rather talk to God. Show him, her, my list. St. Peter sighs, says, God's not in today, you'll have to talk to me. So I show him the list, the same word on each line over and over, all the way to Iowa. Why? Why? The first Y, in rough block letters, the H turned backwards. What's your first one for? St. Peter asks, like he's seen such lists before. I was 5, I say, and my dog was hit by a car, her back legs crushed. We had to have her put to sleep. What's a 5-year-old to make of that? Or my grandfather's pain when he died of cancer 10 years later? And what about napalm? What about kids with cigarette burns, twisted bones, necks shaken loose by coke-crazed mothers or their irate boyfriends? AIDS, the Holocaust, hijackers flying planes into buildings, straight kids hanging gay kids from fences, boys pulling wings off flies, my daughter's stillborn son, for God's sake. We stand there, staring at each other. Then I ask, when can I see God? St. Peter shrugs, leads me to a room, motions me to a bench inside the door. He says again, she's not in today. You'll have to wait. I look around, see benches filled with naked people, lists unfurled at their feet, touching down all over the world, in Bangkok, Helsinki, Istanbul, lists as long or longer than mine, filling the sky with Ys.
No, that was great. That was great. Nick, what do you have?
Well, I don't know if I can follow that up. That was something else right there. I don't always rhyme, but when I do, I rhyme. So the story behind this piece, I'm part of a writers group in Racine that meets at the Racine Public Library. And oftentimes when they close out, they're like, this is your prompt for the day, or for next time, have something. And very infrequently do I do that. But there's one, it was called Music Saves a Life, and I like music a heck of a lot, so I wrote this, and this is like one of the few ones I used a prompt for, so Music Saves a Life. The head is placed on the chopping block. A guillotine awaits its destiny. He's convicted. No turning back, no convincing otherwise. The only crime committed is one of wonder. Trial and error is life lost. The pharaoh peers through the velvet drapes which block the view off of his balcony. The balcony, 10 stories up and projecting outward, is one of power and superiority. The crowd on ground level waits impatiently for the pharaoh to make his commencement. Among the crowd sit 3 teenage children, each one with an instrument in hand. The youngest, Jafari, tunes his zither. Each peg turned slightly clockwise, then counterclockwise, then voila, pitch perfect. The middle child, Ebony, rhythmically strings a pair of castanets around each thumb. The eldest son, Osiris, is known throughout the city as the most promising of young Argul players. This double-piped instrument, somewhat comparable to a clarinet, has the most beautiful sound if used correctly. If mishandled, the screeching noises can be unbearable. Fortunately for the trio, Osiris has the needed experience. Each of them fingers their instrument in a massage-like manner, readying their tools. Then it hits. The entire mass of people erupts as if in a frenzy. The pharaoh shows himself. Directly below the balcony, the condemned prisoner is in a 4-point position with arms and head yoked. The gathered witnesses hush. As the pharaoh points downward with his jewelry-studded hand, a soft, slow, wooden tap begins. Tap, 2, 3, 4. Tap, 2, 3, 4. Tap, 2, 3, 4. The clustered herd looks feverishly for the culprit. Enough, bellows the pharaoh, but the tapping continues. Tap, 2, 3, 4. Tap, 2, 3, 4. A strumming starts. It's absolute in its placement, a 4-chord progression. Da-dee-da-do. Da-dee-da-do. Still unidentified, the duo's pulse continues. The Pharaoh, almost screaming, pronounces, "Stop now, or thou shalt be next on the scaffold." As the last word leaves his mouth, the melody strikes. The ruffling noise of the observers goes silent. All that is heard are the 3 children playing their respective parts. 4 measures in, 8 measures in, 12 measures in, the concrete stature of the Pharaoh goes limp. A lone whimper, followed by a triplet of whimpers. He's crying. After not more than a full minute has passed, the trio stops. Still crying, the Pharaoh beckons to the executioner, "Release the prisoner, for all he has done to deserve this punishment is wonder." And with that, the condemned is released, the crowd goes wild, and music saves a life.
Oh, that was wonderful. Thank you. Yes, you are listening to Speaking of Our Words. So before we turn this over for our open mic, I know Walter here has a few questions. I don't know if Jim and Troy have some questions too. So I'm going to turn over to these guys for you.
Okay. This one's for Nick first. Would you consider all music poetry?
It's a great question. I think the simple answer is yes. I think especially if there's lyrics with the music, I guess you could consider instrumental music poetry of notes. But I do feel like all music has poetry in it. And when I work with the youthful offenders at the correctional facility, these are young kids who are primarily like into hip hop. Like, just, I hate to generalize, but that's the truth. And I have to tell them that, music is poetry. Like, writing your letters to your loved ones can be poetry. So many things can be considered poetry, and I do think music is one of the best examples of that.
And that leads me to the next question for both of you. And how important is honesty in poetry?
Well, I think it's vitally important, but I kind of agree with Emily Dickinson. Sometimes you have to tell the truth, but tell it slant. So there are things that I've written about that I've had to tell in sort of a different way, so as not to hurt someone who might read it, since a lot of my work is based on my life or experiences that I've had or people that I've known or things that I've been exposed to. There are times when I twist something, but the truth is still there. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you get the truth of what you're trying to say about life or about human nature or whatever, and at the same time you're not telling the literal story, but it's still the truth.
As a writer, I understand it. I've learned a lot of fiction, but a little honesty in fiction, I guess.
Yeah.
As far as what I think with honesty, like, the one thing I don't like about a lot of mainstream music is that it's just this, like, replicated, like, cookie cutter approach at a third grade level. It's like, it's really just kind of garbage, and a lot of people are just using whatever sells in the model that's there to, like, to be popular.
Like the Twilight series.
Yeah, I mean, it could be anything really, but it's like, how honest is that to themselves, and how true is that to really what their original intention was? And when you're so worried about catering to pleasing an audience, you sometimes deviate from being honest to yourself. And I feel like the truth and honesty is one of the most important things with writing. And I can't say that I'm always honest. I mean, I've never met the Pharaoh that I just read about. I mean, that's a completely made up story, so it's not true, but maybe something like that could have happened in the past, So I guess people relate, I think, a lot more to honest performance and readings and whatnot, and things that are true and about that person, and they can relate a lot better to that than just some generalized, cookie cutter approach.
Jim, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And this is for both of you. the question is, do you have any mentors? And kind of combined with this is, like, what are your goals after you wrap up your Poet Laureate assignment? Do you have any ideas for what you want to do as you continue growing as poets?
Thanks, Nick. Mentors. I've had many mentors, and not specifically always poets. I went back to school as a non-traditional student, so I went to college when people are supposed to go to college for like a year, and then life happened. So, marriage, kids, divorce, second marriage, stepkids, and I went back to school after 25 years out of the classroom. So going back to school was pretty intimidating to me when I first started. I didn't know if I could still do it. I didn't know if my brain still worked. And Carthage just offered for me just some really amazing people in the classroom and out. But I would have to say probably first and foremost would be Charlotte Chell, who was the division chair of the Natural Science Division when I was hired there as a secretary, by the way, a faculty secretary in 1994. And she just encouraged me from the first day of my employment. I had been very honest saying, I want to go back to school the minute I can. And, it took me 7 years that night to get that degree. And that all of those teachers, Pam Smiley is another one, Dan Tobin, who is now the chair of the English department at Boston College. He was my actual advisor, and he's a wonderful poet. Just all of those people who lifted me up and helped me along with that process. And afterwards, I have a list 10 feet long, what I want to do, not just after being a poet laureate, but after retirement. I get really frustrated with people who are bored in retirement. Like, I don't have enough time to do everything that I want to do. Outreach, social things I want to stay connected to. I do work with Women's and Children's Horizons, with Ruther. I have 12 grandchildren. I have a lot to do. So.
Yeah, I'd have to say, as far as mentors, like, I'm inspired constantly by whoever's around me and whoever's like brave enough to share their work with me or with anybody else. So I'm constantly mentored by, like, we run an open mic in Racine, and all the open mic performers, they mentor me in a sense where I'm like, okay, I really liked what they did with that. Like, I need to really remember to slow down sometimes and speed up sometimes, or have the different inflections and whatnot, my voice or whatever. Specifically, I would have to say the few people that I constantly like go back and forth with. My good friend Aaron Lundqvist, he's one of my favorite poets in Racine. I sure hope he applies for the Poet Laureate position, because I think he would be a really great fit for that. But he's like always sharing something new that he has, and he doesn't care if there's 15 people in a cafe. He'll read his stuff at full volume, and that's very very cool, and I like that a lot. A good buddy Nick Dembski, he and I are garden buddies over at the Marquette Street Garden in Racine, and we'll just be tending our plants and plots and freestyling, and it's kind of weird, but we do that all the time. And he doesn't really freestyle, but he's trying, so someone who's trying to do something that they're not comfortable with is always a big mentor to me. Like, that's what you should be doing. You should be getting out of your comfort zone. And then, like, early on, when I first started, as Chris said before, when I was 15, my older cousin, Dan, I'd be just like this little kid, like hanging out, with the older cousin, the cool older cousin. I was in the back seat of this car that was just like, had the biggest bass system ever, and it's like, and so they're just freestyling back and forth and having a good old time. And so I thought it was the coolest thing. And his best friend Zach, who passed away he passed away first, so like eight years ago he passed, and he was the one who constantly was like, Nick, you gotta get into the cipher, come on, bust a freestyle, man, get down, whatever. And then my good buddy Mark Jerkowitz, he was the one who first at 21 was like, you gotta write this stuff down, you can't just freestyle your whole life. So a lot of people, obviously, all those people I mentioned, and so many other people, including Gene here and all of you. But what I'm going to do after the laureateship thing is I'm going to hopefully have a good relationship with the next laureate and continue to encourage them to make these contacts and, help them in any way possible to help, make the transition very seamless. And I feel like they're supported. And I want to help to, build this Poet Laureate program as best as I can. And then, continue writing and working on music. We have a band, and the band's getting more and more regular gigs and paid gigs and things like that. So more of that, and then I'll jump back into like the normal 9 to 5 probably at some point.
And I think Nick and I are both will be on the committee as we go forward. So we will be able to, I think, really hopefully keep things going and encourage people to apply and be active laureates.
Mm-hmm.
And Troy, did you say you have a question too?
Yeah, I did, and thank you. I'm listening to your poems, and it seems to me that the goal of poetry is almost now, because everyone lives in their own bubble, is to make people uncomfortable and to challenge them in the way that they think. So is that something that you consciously do in your writing?
I personally love making people uncomfortable. It's like one of my favorite things. At our open mic, we do this thing called the Holy Moly, and it's before we start anything. We get in this big circle, put our arms around each other, and sway left and right, and just say, "Holy moly, donut shop." And people are like, "What the hell is going on?" And so that's a good way to get people uncomfortable. Yeah. And, as far as making other people uncomfortable by reading what I've written.
Yeah, or challenging the way that they think through what you write.
Yeah, definitely. I have it written in one of my pieces. It's kind of like, I let out these emotions, but I disguise it somewhat. And then it's, I think, on the reader to, like, uncover, kind of like this camouflaged language. And, I don't want to just be like, so today I went to Fireside and got a calzone, I want to be something like cheesy gooey, like some random, that doesn't just give the audience the answer right away.
Well, I think life is uncomfortable, and I think if you render life honestly in your poetry or your writing or your music, it will challenge people, and they'll also connect to it. So, and nothing makes me more excited is when somebody comes up to me after reading and has been touched by something I've written, and maybe not in the way I thought they would be touched by what I wrote. Like, that's not at all what I thought I was writing about, but on some level it touched that person. That's what it's all about. And I don't know if that's being uncomfortable, but just some human emotion coming from the honesty of what I write about life. That's what I mean. And you talked about honesty before, and I think that's it, is rendering life the way it really is.
Well, very good. Well, thank you guys very much. Nick Ramsey, the current Poet Laureate of Racine, and Gene Preston, the current Poet Laureate of Kenosha. Thank you for sharing your work with us and the thoughts and the inside workings of your process. We have a few minutes left, and I know Walter and Jim and Troy each have some pieces they would like to read, so I'm going to turn it over to Walter Gascoigne.
Thanks, Chris. It's a quick poem. I decided to write a poem so everybody could laugh when we're all done. It's called Tethered. Attached with string, reality bound. Damocles' blade sways in the wind, silhouetted against the clouds. Keen edges illuminated, strokes of lightning anticipating the end of happiness. A single strand of hair holds fast to hopes and dreams. Memories of lovers, jobs, family, and friends, predictable lifetime anchored in a cord. Entwining with tendons of life, creating a web, encompassing a sphere stretching into the stratosphere, toward unknown worlds, known heartaches. Mordacious sword cuts the cord, severing the strand, elastic undone. Flinging outwards, perceiving intimacies of death, discerning possibilities never conceived before, freeing objectivity with empathy, cut from desires, becoming the blade, delivering sweet release from apprehension.
All right, Walter Gascoigne, thank you very much. All right, and Jim Janus, I know you've got a poem and something
Yeah, I've got
else to
two
read too.
pieces here. One is a poem. I mostly write short fiction, but during National Poetry Month, I did try to write a poem a day. I came up with about 15 poems rather than 30. So this was the last one that I wrote. And this is called From the Seems Like It's Safe Side. The gray of the morn made me want it even more. Wakened from unconscious of last night's excesses, my old lady too said, "Baby, you gotta get some." So I did. I done crossed the line into the neighborhood so many've left behind. I drove low past the fallen pants guys waiting in the rain for the currency exchange. Drove low past the cruiser, dirty white Interceptor, black hubs and cow catcher where there's never been no cows. Drove low past the Church of Joy, its parking lot puddles of tears, not rain. Drove low past the barred windows of the convenience meat and grocery, its billboard bold boasting, cigarettes, Citron, Link, and lottery. I drove low and then stopped, hurried into the lab where they make it, nodded to the girl, showed my clump of bills, her tattoo of Magdalene appearing to us both. I hurried back out and drove low again, round a burned-out mattress dumped on the double yellow, then made it back over to the seems like it's safe side. Back in my living room and kitchen, tossed the bag to my wife. Warm honey-glazed donuts to go with the scrambles and bacon, while the landscaper's mower hummed loud in the backyard. Okay, and this next piece is a short story. So I submitted this to the Waukegan Public Library to their 2015 Ray Bradbury Creative Contest. And this is called Retro Rocket. Against the black infinity of space, a rocket ship floated like a blimp above a long and gradual curve of the red planet. The ship's bulging hull, like a mirror, gathered what could be seen, the field of stars, the distant sun, the rust-colored horizon, and reflected it back. Inside the rocket's nose cone, two figures in bulky spacesuits and visored helmets sat side by side, facing the fore of the ship. They monitored indicator lamps and gauges on a panel before them, and they moved their thick-gloved fingers over the array of knobs and switches. The silver ship slowed, nosed up, then began its descent to Mars. The rocket descended vertically, a reverse of its liftoff from Earth. Fire columns thundered from nozzles at the ship's bottom. The blaze of orange and yellow pushed against the Martian ground, stirring red sand into a billowing cloud through which the ship set down on the planet. The engines quieted and silence filled the ship. As the astronauts awaited their signal, a speaker crackled with a voice. "This is Mission Control calling Vegas Station. Sandship 1 has landed." Beyond the upright rocket's porthole, the night sky glimmered with pinpoints of bright white, but one shone a brilliant blue. The sleeping captain didn't notice, but Lieutenant Ellison did. He used a scope to magnify the object and discovered that the brilliance came not from a star, but from a faraway planet with oceans of blue brightened by a more distant sun. Ellison gazed in awe of Earth. On Earth, a small town slept as street lamps shined orange onto tree-lined lanes. In the dark, dewy lawns lay in squares on either side of concrete sidewalks and walks leading to concrete stoops, illuminated by single light fixtures above front doors of brick homes. Atop a shingled roof towered an aluminum antenna. It gathered radio waves and routed them down to a cool basement, dim and unfinished. There, an aging man in a thick sweater sat at a wooden table before a shortwave radio. From the metal console, a cable curled up to a pair of large headphones cupped over his ears. Through the headset, a voice crackled, "Mission Control to Vegas Station. We've delivered your astronauts. Captain Borges, you and the lieutenant get some sleep. At dawn, we'll commence the Mars walk." This transmission stirred the old man from his daydream, in which he saw the landing like those in the sci-fi movies of the 1930s. Hearing the radio transmission assured him that now men really would walk on Mars. He'd been waiting for it since he was a boy and wanted to be part of it. So he pushed a radio button and pulled forward a tall chrome microphone and spoke. "This is Waukegan 1 calling Sandship 1. Then he listened through the hiss and hum and squeal for a response. But the voice that came next came from behind him. "Dad?" His middle-aged son in jeans and a t-shirt called from the bottom of the stairs. "Dad!" The old man pulled off the headphones and swiveled around, his face feeling warm as he realized his son might have heard him. "You startled me. You're back from the library already?" "I've been back for a while. What are you doing?" The son rubbed his own arms. "It's cold down here." The old man's embarrassment went away. "Using this radio is my nighttime routine. Do you know it works as good now as when I built it 50 years ago?" The old man's blue eyes became blank for a moment. Then the sparkle returned. "How was the presentation?" "It was fantastic. The author discussed his book about the Mars mission. Tomorrow he's touring the control room in Nevada. It's from there that Borges and Ellison operate the mechanical astronauts." Though the newspaper reported for months that the mission would be unmanned, the father rejected the idea. "Mechanical astronauts? That's no way to explore Mars. Man himself must take the ride, step off the ladder, feel his boots sink into the red dust. When life on Mars is discovered, man must be there to look it in the eye." The son smiled, familiar with his father's retro temperament. "You mean like that vintage sci-fi poster over your desk?" The son continued, trying to be kind. "Dad, you know rockets don't land backwards, and ladders don't slide down from under their fins." Then he shook his head. "And as for looking a Martian in the eye, there's no life there. The probes and rovers confirm that." The old man mocked. "The probes and rovers confirm that." Then he protested. "Technology has ruined it. The remote missions, the imaging, the internet and its interactive globe of Mars, all this destroys our imagination, destroys the possibilities, destroys the wonder." The son appreciated his father's sentimentality. "Dad, come upstairs. We can watch the mission together. This one is different. The mechanical astronauts let us see through their eyes." "Nah," the old man dismissed the offer. "I won't watch. But I'll come up in a few minutes. First, I need to write some notes about what the radio picked up tonight." The son's steps on the wooden stairs echoed off the basement walls, and the old man turned to the console. He put the headphones on, reached for the dial, pulled forward the chrome microphone and whispered, "Sandship 1, this is Waukegan Station. Confirm Martian sunrise." Then he continued a little louder. "Captain Borges, Lieutenant Ellison, time to commence the Mars walk." The old man's mind resumed the movie. He imagined his message being converted into radio waves, sent up through the antenna into the still night sky, up into space where a planet shined red. On that world, rising above its rust-colored horizon, the white sun silhouetted the standing rocket ship. From it, a ladder slid down. Then an astronaut in a bulky spacesuit descended and stepped back from the last rung onto the Martian powder. The figure turned from the ship and began to walk. It paused, knelt down, pulled off its glove, and plunged its hand into the soil. The astronaut brought up its cupped palm and let the red sand sift through its fingers. "Dad," the son called down from the living room, "it started. Ellison's astronaut has stepped out of the lander." But the movie continued in the old man's mind. The astronaut stood and removed his helmet, and then his mouth shaped into a scream, and his eyes grew wide as he came face to face with a Martian.
All right, Jim Janus, thank you very much. Well, that is our show for today. So if you have any questions or comments, or you wish to participate on this program, please visit KenoshaWritersGuild.com and come to one of our meetings. And please visit the Facebook page for this show, Speaking of Our Words, and feel free to leave comments there and on our YouTube page. Thank you to Dave Cole and WGTD, Steve Brown, Nita Hunter, our engineer Troy McDonald, and Lisa Adamowitz-Kless, and the Kenosha Writers Guild. Thank you very much to our guests today, Gene Preston and Nick Ramsey, Walter Gascoigne, and Jim Janus. This is Chris DeGuire, and the world needs your stories. We will see you again. Thank you for listening.